They hadn't spoken in 40 years. Two brothers who once shared everything, toys, secrets, dreams, now lived as strangers in the same city. But tonight, in seats 14C and 14D at the Bob Marley concert, fate was about to force a reckoning that would either destroy them completely or heal wounds that had festered for 4 decades. Oakland Coliseum Arena, September 23, 1978. The Babylon by Bus tour was making its Bay Area stop, and 15,000 reggae fans had gathered to witness Bob Marley at the height of his power. Among them, 2 men in their 50s sat side by side, each unaware of the other's presence until the house lights dimmed and they caught sight of familiar profiles in the darkness. Marcus Washington, 52, shifted uncomfortably in seat 14C. Dressed in his off-duty Army fatigues, the decorated Vietnam veteran looked out of place among the dreadlocked crowd. His jaw tightened as he recognized the man beside him, a man he'd sworn never to speak to again. In seat 14D sat James Washington, 48, Marcus's younger brother. James wore a worn Bob Marley t-shirt and had let his hair grow into small locks. He worked as a mechanic in West Oakland and had scraped together money for months to afford this ticket. When he saw Marcus, 40 years of suppressed anger flashed across his face. The Washington brothers had grown up in a small house in East Oakland, raised by their father Samuel after their mother died in childbirth when James was born. Samuel had worked double shifts at the shipyard to provide for his boys, never remarrying, dedicating his entire life to raising Marcus and James with love and discipline. But in 1938, when the boys were 18 and 22, Samuel died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving behind a modest house, $3,000 in savings, and a choice that would destroy his family. Samuel's handwritten will contained one devastating sentence: "I leave everything to my eldest son Marcus, trusting he will take care of his brother." Marcus, fresh from his army training and rigid in his thinking, interpreted this literally. He inherited the house and money, then offered James a room and an allowance, essentially treating his adult brother like a dependent child. James, proud and independent, was insulted. He wanted the inheritance split equally, or at least to be consulted about major decisions. When Marcus refused, saying, "Dad left it all to me," James made a choice that would echo through decades. "Then you can keep it all," James had said, packing his few belongings. "But you're losing your brother." That was 1938. Now it was 1978, and neither had bent. Over 4 decades, they'd lived parallel lives just miles apart. Marcus had served 3 tours of duty, earned a colonel's rank, married twice, had 4 children. James had become an expert mechanic, married once, raised 2 daughters. They'd attended the same high school graduation ceremonies for their children, sitting on opposite sides of the auditorium. They'd shopped at the same grocery stores, carefully avoiding each other's presence. Both men secretly loved Bob Marley's music, but neither would admit it to family or friends. Marcus, the conservative military man, was moved by songs like War and Get Up, Stand Up. They reminded him of his fights against racism in the Army. James connected with No Woman, No Cry and 3 Little Birds. They spoke to his struggles raising daughters as a single father after his wife left. Neither brother knew the other was a Bob Marley fan. The tickets to tonight's show had come through different channels. Marcus had received his from a fellow veteran who couldn't attend. James had bought his from a scalper outside the venue. Pure chance had placed them in adjacent seats. As the opening acts performed, both brothers sat rigid, acutely aware of each other's presence but determined not to acknowledge it. Marcus stared straight ahead, his military bearing intact. James slouched in his seat, occasionally glancing at his brother's familiar profile. The tension was broken when Bob Marley finally took the stage. The crowd erupted as Bob launched into jamming, his dreadlocks flying as he moved across the stage with infectious energy. Despite their discomfort, both brothers found themselves drawn into the music. Marcus's foot began tapping against his will. James started nodding his head to the rhythm. For 90 minutes, they sat side by side, both lost in the same music, both moved by the same messages, both unaware that they were sharing an experience that meant everything to each of them. But it was during No Woman, No Cry that something shifted. Bob slowed the song down, making it more intimate, more personal. As he sang the line, "Everything's gonna be all right," James's eyes filled with tears. He thought of their father, of the family they'd once been, of 40 years of birthdays and holidays spent apart. Marcus noticed his brother crying and felt something crack inside his own chest. Here was the little brother he'd carried on his shoulders, taught to throw a baseball, protected from neighborhood bullies. Now gray-haired and weathered, still hurting from wounds Marcus had helped create. The song ended, and Bob stepped to the microphone for one of his between-song speeches. His words would prove to be the key that unlocked 4 decades of pain. "You know," Bob said, his Jamaican accent carrying clearly through the arena, "I've been thinking about family tonight, about how easy it is to hurt the people we love most, how easy it is to let pride build walls where there should be bridges." Both brothers went still, as if Bob was speaking directly to them. "I see so many families broken by things that seemed important in the moment, but don't matter in the light of eternity. Money, property, who said what to who. And meanwhile, life is passing by. Children are growing up without knowing their uncles. Brothers are growing old without their best friends." Marcus felt his throat tighten. James wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "But here's what I know," Bob continued, his voice growing more passionate. "Family is not perfect. Family hurts you. Family disappoints you. But family is also the only thing that lasts forever. When everything else falls apart, family remains." Bob paused, looking out at the crowd as if he could see directly into the hearts of the Washington brothers. "So if you got family you ain't talking to, if you got brothers or sisters you're carrying grudges against, let me tell you something. Life is too short, and love is too precious to waste on pride." He struck a chord on his guitar. "This next song is for anyone who needs to remember that forgiveness isn't weakness. Forgiveness is strength. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be the first one to say, 'I'm sorry.'" Bob began playing "One Love," but before he started singing, he added one more thought that would shatter both brothers completely. "You know what my father taught me before he died? He said, 'Bob, when family breaks apart, the whole world gets smaller. When family comes together, the whole world opens up.'" That was the moment when 40 years of carefully constructed walls began to crumble. Marcus turned to look at his brother for the first time in 4 decades. James met his eyes. Neither spoke, but in that look was a lifetime of shared memories, building forts in their backyard, staying up late telling stories, the day their father died, the moment their family fractured. As Bob sang "One Love, One Heart," "Let's get together and feel all right," both brothers began to cry. Not the dignified, restrained tears of middle-aged men, but the deep, wrenching sobs of children who had lost something precious and were just now realizing it might be recoverable. "James," Marcus whispered during the song, his voice barely audible over the music. "Marcus," James replied, turning toward his brother. They didn't speak again until the song ended. but something fundamental had shifted between them. The ice of 40 years was beginning to melt. When the concert ended and the crowd began to disperse, both brothers remained in their seats, neither wanting to be the first to leave, neither knowing how to bridge the gap between acknowledgement and reconciliation. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You still working on cars?" "Every day," James replied. "You still in the Army?" "Retired last year, Colonel." They sat in silence for another moment, the arena emptying around them. "Dad would have loved this music," James said quietly. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "He would have." Another pause. "Marcus," James said, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been angry for 40 years, but sitting here tonight, listening to this music with you, I don't want to be angry anymore." Marcus closed his eyes, fighting back fresh tears. "I've been thinking about that will for 40 years, James. What Dad really meant. I think he meant for me to take care of you by being your brother, not your keeper." "Maybe we both misunderstood," James said. They sat in the nearly empty arena, two gray-haired men finally having the conversation they should have had in 1938. "I kept the house," Marcus said. "Never sold it. Your room is exactly the same." James looked at his brother in surprise. "You kept my room?" "Every year on your birthday, I'd go in there and wonder if this would be the year you'd come home." Now James was crying again. "I drove by the house every Christmas, sat outside for hours, wondering if you were thinking about me too." They talked for another hour in those arena seats, 40 years of hurt and misunderstanding slowly unwinding. Marcus told James about his children, his military service, his 2 failed marriages. James talked about his daughters, his work, his struggles as a single father. As they finally stood to leave, James looked at his brother. "Marcus, can I say something?" "Anything. I forgive you for everything. The will, the house, the 40 years. I forgive you." Marcus broke down completely then. "I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. I turned our father's trust into my pride, and it cost us our family." They embraced then, 2 brothers holding each other for the first time in 40 years, both crying like the children they'd once been. As they walked toward the exit, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened, they passed the backstage area where Bob Marley was signing autographs for a few lucky fans. Without thinking, both brothers approached. "Mr. Marley," Marcus said, "we just wanted to thank you." Bob looked at the 2 older men, both with tear-stained faces, both radiating something that looked like relief. "Thank me for what, brothers?" "We're brothers," James said. "We hadn't spoken in 40 years until tonight. Your music, your words about family, you brought us back together." Bob's face lit up with one of his legendary smiles. "Music is supposed to heal, brother. But the healing happened because you both chose love over pride. That's all you, not me." He paused, studying their faces. 40 years is a long time to be apart. But you know what? You got 20, maybe 30 years ahead of you. That's enough time to make up for everything, if you choose to. Bob reached out and put one hand on each of their shoulders. "Music brought you together tonight, but it's love that's going to keep you together. Don't waste another day, you hear me?" Both brothers nodded, still hardly believing this was real. "One more thing," Bob added with a grin. "Next time you want to hear reggae music, invite each other. Music is better when it's shared with family." That was September 23rd, 1978. Marcus and James Washington never spent another holiday apart. Marcus sold his apartment and moved back into their childhood home with James. They turned it into a duplex, each having their own space but sharing meals and memories, daily. James taught Marcus about reggae music and Rastafarian philosophy. Marcus shared his military discipline and organizational skills to help James expand his auto repair business into a successful shop. When Marcus remarried in 1980, James was his best man. When James's daughter graduated college in 1982, Marcus sat in the front row, beaming with pride for his niece. They attended every Bob Marley concert that came through California, always sitting together, always remembering the night their family was reborn through reggae music. When Bob Marley died in 1981, both brothers attended the memorial service in Los Angeles. During the ceremony, Marcus leaned over to James and whispered, "He saved our family." "No," James replied. "He reminded us we still had one." Marcus Washington died in 1995, surrounded by his brother, his wife, and all their children. His last words were to James, "Thank you for coming home." James lived until 2003, spending his final years telling anyone who would listen about the night Bob Marley taught him that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing a different future.